Settle in, get comfortable, and let your mind drift back 2 million years when a tough, curious ancestor learned to outwalk predators, outlast winters, and even carry fire through the dark. That quiet genius kept them alive for an almost unimaginable span of time. Before we begin, where in the world are you watching from tonight? Share your corner of the map in the comments, then close your eyes if you like, and let this calm story carry you off. They begin with the simple miracle of standing tall, a quiet shift of bone and tendon that turns each step into a promise. Long legs swing like pendulums, hips shaped to balance the weight of a day's journey, feet arched to store and release energy with every push. The big toe points forward, gripping earth and letting go, gripping and letting go, until the rhythm of walking becomes as steady as breath. The spine holds a gentle S-curve, the head rides level, and a thin cord of muscle along the back of the neck keeps gaze steady on the horizon. Even the skin is part of the stride. Countless sweat glands open and cool the body, turning heat into vapor, trading water for distance. In this arrangement of parts, ankle, knee, hip, shoulder, Homo erectus becomes a traveler first, and always an animal tuned for miles. The morning is cool, and the light pools slowly between grasses. They rise without haste. A child clings for a moment to a parent's shoulder before settling onto a hip. A bundle of flaked stone knocks gently against a thigh. A skin bag sloshes with yesterday's water. The group moves into a line that lengthens and shortens with the terrain, never quite rushing, never quite stopping, letting the ground decide pace. In the hush of the early day, feet drum a soft pattern into dust and dew, a sound nearly swallowed by wind. Ahead lie scattered trees marking a riverbed that may or may not hold water this season. Beyond that, a slope of darker soil that sometimes yields tubers. Beyond that, nothing but the long suggestion of elsewhere. They are built to meet elsewhere. The gluteus muscles tighten to keep the torso from pitching forward. The shoulders loosen so arms can swing and save energy. And the nose, set forward, moistens and warms air as they breathe. Every feature carries a small task, and together those tasks add up to resilience. When the sun climbs and the heat comes on, the miracle of cooling begins to speak in a different voice. Where other creatures pant and seek shade, they keep moving, slow and steady, releasing heat through skin, trading sweat for time. Time is food. Time is water. Time is the chance to follow a herd that trots, then slows, then trots again, until gait becomes a story the walkers can read. Persistence is their quiet skill, not a sprint, Not a burst, just the gentle tyranny of steady motion. If the wind shifts, they read it. If the ground roughens, their thickened heel pads absorb the shock and parcel it into the bones of the leg. They are teachers of patience to themselves, and they are students of terrain. Look closely, and the landscape becomes a library. A rack of antelope ribs, thinned and dust-soft, says predators moved through last night and left no meat. A twist of tracks where the soil holds memory says a small herd turned east toward a valley that may shelter a spring. A cluster of birds circling low over an empty flat says there is nothing fresh there, not today. They learn these pages by walking them. The map is not in their hands. It is in their muscles, in the tiny adjustments of ankles and knees when the ground changes, in the instinct to crest a ridge at a shallow angle to spare breath, in the choice to rest in a corridor of broken shade where a breeze can find damp skin. Even rest is active. It is the art of choosing where to let the body cool so the body can go on. They share the work. One notices fruiting figs and peels the skin with patient thumbs. Another chips a flake from a hand axe, the smooth oval turning in the palm while sparks of stone thought settle into the day's plan. Another carries a child who sleeps with forehead pressed to collarbone, rocked by the metronome of steps. Information passes in glances and gestures. A hand lifts to point at a dust plume. A chin tips to note a hoof print. A soft click of tongue says, "Listen." Language may be sparse, but coordination is rich. Cooperation turns miles into a circle of safety that moves with them, a portable camp of memory and muscle. Even danger bends a little before their endurance. A cat watches from the shade, yellow eyes narrow, tail twitching, but the walkers do not behave like panic. Their silhouettes stay tall, the line stays coherent, and the cat senses that patience will not split them today. At dusk, when shadows stretch and instincts sharpen, they gather into a loose ring where grass is short and visibility generous. Their feet have earned this patch of earth. They sit on haunches shaped by distance, and their breathing slows. They may coax a spark into flame on some nights, but even without fire, the day's walking has done half the work of protection. It has placed them where winds carry scent away, where the ground tells stories through vibrations, where their ears can hear the night approach. They move with seasons as if seasons were relatives. Dry months pull them along riverbeds where the last pools cling to depressions lined with clay. Wet months invite them onto higher ground where the soil is firm and new shoots rise. The body reads season as appetite. More fat in the marrow when the herds are near, more roots when the hooves are far, more shellfish when the river opens, more eggs when birds nest low. Walking is the hinge that swings them between options. They do not hoard beyond what they can carry. They trade abundance for mobility and find, year after year, that mobility is abundance enough. A day's distance is stitched from small choices. They choose not to chase every hint of opportunity, but to angle toward the best odds. They choose to keep a pace that respects the slowest legs, so no one splits from the line. They choose to stop when the smallest child's breath becomes a thin whistle, and start again when it thickens. These choices are not written, not spoken, but practiced until they become the group's gait. And in that shared gait is the secret. Survival is not a moment of triumph, but the accumulation of careful steps, each one costing little, each one paid from a deep purse of endurance. In the cool hour before dawn, when the sky pales and the ground exhales the night's kept chill, they rise again. Hands reach for the familiar weight of stone and hide. Joints loosen with the first dozen strides. The world unfolds at walking speed, a termite mound glistening with dew, an old elephant trail veering to the right, a scatter of acacia thorns that highlights the safe path like tiny stars. The heart keeps rhythm. The breath keeps rhythm. The line stretches and gathers, stretches and gathers, a living thread that stitches water to shade, shade to forage, forage to rest, rest to motion, motion to the next low curve of horizon, and the next, and the next. The legs that carried yesterday's miles are ready for today's, and distance, which begins as ground, becomes a kind of quiet shelter they can take with them wherever the land allows them to go. Night begins not with darkness, but with a glow. It starts as a thread of orange stitched into dry grass by lightning, or caught from a smouldering log left by a shrinking brush fire. A living ember, the color of sunset trapped in a fist of bark. They learn to nurse it the way they nurse a child. Feed it gently, shield it from wind, breathe life into it without letting it bite. Someone carries a coal cupped in a hollow of rotten wood, wrapped in damp leaves so it will travel slow and safe, leaving only the sweet smell of smoke on the air as the line of walkers chooses a place to settle. When they halt, the ember is offered like a gift to a ring of twigs and hand-thin branches. There is a pause, the held breath just before ignition, then a hush of heat, a soft crackle, and the circle of night redraws itself. Fire changes the texture of evening. Cold edges melt away from fingers and forearms. Skin prickled by the day's wind learns a new sensation, warmth that seeps like water into muscle and bone. Insects waver at the boundary and give up. Eyes that scanned for danger all afternoon can afford to rest because the flame's low roar is a fence as real as thorn. Smell shifts too. The sharp green of crushed grass fades under wood smoke, which clings to hair and hides, a perfume of safety that predators distrust. Where there is smoke, there is company. Where there is company, there is trouble. And so the watchers in the brush keep their distance. The dark keeps its secrets a little farther away. The fire makes a room without walls. Its light grazes faces and hands, turning each expression into a slow dance of shadow and reflection. It lifts a second sun into the center of the group, small and manageable. A star that answers to breath and sticks. Children learn to stretch their palms toward it and pull back before discomfort. To read heat like a language you can understand with skin. Someone feeds the flames with careful rhythm. Branch, pause, branch, pause. So the light doesn't lunge and the wood lasts. Someone else sits with a length of green twig and peels the bark into fragrant ribbons, not because they must, but because there is time now for hands to be idle while ears are full. The world shrinks to a circle of orange and the silhouettes of grass heads nodding in the warm wind. Food becomes different here. Tubers that fought back against teeth in daylight soften in steam and ash. Seeds release scents that speak of harvests to come. A strip of meat, hard and stringy an hour ago, now glistens and gives, fibers loosening under heat like knots untied. They learn where to place things in the fire's geography, close to the heart for quick sear, among coals for patient sweetness, on a raised stone when food should warm but not burn. A cracked bone leans by the embers, marrow warming to a richness that coats the mouth and quiets the stomach more deeply than raw fare. Chewing softens, jaws work less, bellies ease, and sleep, when it comes, is thicker and kinder. With cooked food, the day gives back some of the energy it took. Tools respond to the flame, too. A wooden spear, scraped straight and smooth, is passed back and forth just above the coals, turned and turned until the tip hardens and darkens, the grain tightened by heat. A knot of sap drips from a stick and stiffens into glue that will later help lash stone to wood. The hand axe that served so well among river pebbles gets warmed near the edge, not to change the stone, but to dry the hafting, to keep a grip sure when dawn returns to miles. Even smoke itself is a tool, waved beneath a woven cradle to quiet biting flies, blown over a cache of drying strips to deter hungry noses that patrol the night. Every part of the fire teaches a use, and they gather those lessons the way they gather sparks. Voices change in the light. They fall softer, as if the flame would listen better to low tones, as if loud talk might blow the tiny world apart. Speech is not yet a net of long sentences, but rhythm and pitch and pulse are already ladders to meaning. A hum begins, a note that children copy, and then a simple pattern of sounds, maybe a chant, maybe just the shape of breath made musical because repetition soothes. Hands lift to illustrate a memory. The close call at the water's edge, the sudden burst of quail, the shape of a track that meant turn back. Shadows on the rocks become drawings made of light, teaching without marks. The circle becomes a school that no one names, a lesson that repeats itself every evening, crawling from flame into thought. Guarding becomes easier here. Instead of eyes trying to swallow the dark alone, the group can take turns at the rim of warmth, letting heat soak into backs while ears tilt outward. One wakes another with a touch and a nod. No startle, no panic. Only the exchange of responsibility like a passing branch. The watchkeeper feeds the coals until they blush, rakes ashes over the top to tamp the brightest tongues, and listens to the night talk to itself. The creak of cooling earth, the small chirps and clicks that mean harmless presence, the sudden hush that means be ready. From the guard's place, the glow paints the sleepers in soft amber, limbs loose, faces unknotted, breath slow. Fire does not only protect, it invites rest to be deeper, the kind that returns strength like a quiet river returning to a dry bend. Traveling with flame becomes a craft. In the morning, while the sun is still a rumor, someone kneels and uncovers the coals. A breath and a twist of dry grass, a handful of twigs, and the star is reborn. Before they break camp, the fire is not extinguished, but translated into a traveler's form. Embers buried in punkwood, a roll of bark with a coal tucked into its center, a cradle of damp moss that will smolder for hours, whispering smoke. The carrier swings it from a thong or sets it in a net bag, checking now and then with a careful breath to make sure the heat persists. If a stream must be crossed, someone goes ahead to find stones that stand above the current, and the ember crosses like a small secret on the back of a steady hand. In this way, night's heart is never entirely lost. Even the sky seems different by firelight. Stars are no longer the only points of brightness. There is a near constellation at their feet, sparks lofting and vanishing, as if small suns were born and died in a heartbeat. The moon paints the ground in silver. The flames paint faces in gold. The two lights meet and braid along cheekbones and brow ridges, the ancient lines of their faces honored by element and orbit. When clouds close the heavens, the fire steps forward and says, "We will make our own sky for a while." When wind moves, the flame answers, bowing but not breaking, changing shape to survive the gust. Another teacher showing how to live by yielding, and then rising again. Ash becomes part of their medicine. A smear across the skin cools and shields against sun's bite in the day that follows. Mixed with a little water, it scours grease from hands, cleans tools, dries a scrape so it will heal without rot. Coals wrapped in leaves warm an old ache in a knee, tucked against flesh as the body gives in to the comfort of heat. The scent of smoke in hair becomes a signature that bites less at biting insects, a quiet notice to the wild noses of the plains that this group is not simple prey. Even the ground under last night's fire has uses. Made bare and clean by heat, it's a place where the smallest footprint will write itself clearly at dawn, a page you can read for warning or welcome. Story thickens around the flames as surely as the stew in a skin pot. Not only the day's events, but the longer threads, the great river that runs beyond the far ridge, the season when fruit hangs low, the slope where a cat was seen and avoided, converge here and are marked in shared memory. A child touches a scar on an elder's forearm and hears about the spark that jumped and bit, about the lesson learned in respect for heat's quick teeth. Laughter ripples, and the fire throws up a brighter gust, as if pleased to be part of the tale. Eyes get heavy in this space between danger and comfort, where the crackle is a lullaby, and the smell is a blanket, and one by one heads nod, as if agreeing with a wisdom too old for words. Beyond the circle, darkness is still vast, but the imagination no longer fills it only with teeth and hunger. The flame's boundary makes a comprehensible world. Inside, where warmth and food and kin live. Outside, where questions wait. It teaches them to divide tasks by light, delicate work near the coals, rough work in the shadows, quiet listening just beyond the reach of glow. And in that division grows a sense of time that is richer than sunrise and sunset. There are hours when the fire is high and talk is lively, hours when it's banked and only the red eye watches, hours before dawn when coals are coaxed and plans whispered over steam. The day will come again with its pace and its distances, but here, in the elastic stretch of evening, they learn the arts that distance alone could never teach. Sometimes the fire is coaxed to speak in other ways. Wet leaves laid on the edge bloom into smoke that drifts in steady columns, a language the wind carries over a bend in the land. A watcher far off may read that column and know, camp is here, all is well. Or perhaps, camp is here, come carefully, or be danger past. On still nights, someone will lay a fresh branch and watch sparks climb, pointing with brief stars at invisible heights. And in those brief stars, a new kind of wondering awakens, the kind that looks up and then back at the small sun at their feet and senses a kinship between what burns above and what warms their hands now. Wonder is a tool, too. One that shapes attention, one that keeps a mind open to patterns and chances and shy opportunities that only those who are already listening will hear. The night wears on. Heat settles into stones arranged around the heart of the fire, storing warmth the way bodies store strength, to be given back in the hour before dawn when breath fogs and shoulders seek comfort. A sleeper rolls closer, and a parent reaches absent-mindedly, half dreaming, to keep a small foot from straying into brightness. The careful one on watch clears ash just enough to let the coals breathe without flaring, and the surface blushes back like a living thing soothed. Beyond the ring, grasses sigh, and somewhere a low call sounds and then fades, reassured, perhaps, that the strange sun-wearers are content where they are. The flame leans to one side, then the other, settles, and in its quiet, patient heart, the promise of the next meal, the next tool, the next calm stretch of rest, keeps on smouldering. Stone begins as a question in the hand. A river cobble, cold and heavy, sits in a palm that measures weight without words, turning it toward light to read its grain and scars. Fingers test for flaws, for the thin seam that will welcome a blow, for the hint of a hidden plane. Another stone, denser, tougher, becomes the hammer, and the first touch is gentle, more a greeting than a strike. Then comes the clean sound that everyone knows, a bright crack like a bird's call, and a flake leaps away, carrying with it a curl of the cobble's memory. The shard flashes with a new edge, razor thin, sweet with threat and promise. From there, the work becomes a conversation. Hit and listen, hit and listen. The rhythm as steady as walking, but focused into wrists and knuckles, into angles judged by eye and felt by skin. They do not carve at random. In their minds, they carry a shape that does not yet exist in the stone. A leaf, a tear, a pale crescent of symmetry that both hands want to hold. They remove everything that is not that shape. Blow by blow, the cobble thins, front and back, each flake guided by the last one's scar. A platform is made, a small stage on the edge where the next strike will begin, and the hammer kisses that spot at just the right slant. So the fracture dives across the face and breaks free clean. The stone answers honestly to angles, too steep, and the blow crushes, too shallow, and the blow skates, just right, and the flake peels away with rings like ripples on water. The telltale bulb of percussion bright as a thumbprint of force. They learn this not in a day, but in seasons, watching elders with eyes that drink in detail until wrists remember what mouths cannot yet explain. Children sit within the safe arc of elbows and knees and stare as the story of the tool emerges. They pick up flakes and worry them between finger and thumb, testing the bite on a reed or a twig, gasping when it slices too easily, laughing when their breath shows small white scratches on the surface. The elders slow down here, exaggerating the swing, tapping the platform to show where the blow will land, holding a fresh flake against the core to predict the next line of fracture. Teaching is more than a single act. It is a patience that stretches across many evenings, many different stones, many little failures folded gently into progress. A hand reaches to guide a smaller hand, turning the wrist just so, and the next strike lands closer to truth. When a flake breaks badly, there is no scold, only the calm turning of the core to find a new possibility in the changed shape. They search different places for different mines of stone. Along the river, the quartzite is tough and sparkly, good for heavy work, edges that last, even if they are not the keenest. On a higher ridge, nodules of flint sleep inside chalk-like eggs, glassy and fine-grained, willing to give long, curling flakes that sing as they leave. Near a dry valley, basalt lies dark and dense, eager to bruise, but generous once you learn its temper. They come to know which rock likes a hard hammer and which prefers a softer one, antler or dense wood. So the force travels deeper and peels a broad flake without shattering. Tools for making tools gather in a small kit, a heavy round for first blows, a smoother baton for thinning, a flake with its own sharp edge to trim the platforms thin as bark. The kit is simple to see and complex to use, like the night sky full of stars that look like a scatter until you learn to see the paths between them. The shape advances towards symmetry, as if drawn by gravity. One face mirrors the other, edges meet in a line that travels evenly around the tool, neither side greedy for mass. In that balance lives a power. The tool becomes easier to hold, easier to turn, less likely to twist from the grip when it bites into sinew or wood. Thinning is an art within the art. Broad flakes must be coaxed from the center, crossing the spine to leave a tool light in the middle and strong near the edge. A kind of stone bird with bones where it needs them and none where it doesn't. This is not brute strength, but a choreography of small decisions, each flake a word in a sentence whose grammar is fracture. When it goes well, the ground around the napper fills with bright curls and shards, each one a record of thought made visible. Use begins the moment the edge is true. A strip of hide meets that edge and opens with a sigh. revealing wet red and clean white beneath fur. Meat separates from bone more easily, leaving less for tooth and claw, giving more to the bellies gathered by the fire. Long cuts require a long edge, and so they love the big, thin tools that slide and keep sliding before needing a new bite. For cracking joints and prying marrow, the same tool can be flipped and used with a thicker part of its rim, the hand shifting to a grip that can push and pry without snapping the stone. One tool, many lives, because every edge is a chance, and every chance is made by planning the whole shape from the start. The proof of the design shows up later on the ground in the form of cut marks that travel straight and even, in the tidy filleting of muscle groups, in bones opened cleanly, so even the last velvet secret inside can be licked from the hollow. Tools travel with them, crossing days and even seasons, growing smaller and sharper with each repair. A nick from a stubborn tendon is removed with a quick press flake, a dullness revived by retouch that walks along the rim like a careful dance. This maintenance is a language of tiny choices, not so much that the edge thickens, not so little that the dull patch remains, just enough to keep the cutting line bright. A large hand axe can shrink through many meals into a pocket companion, then into a scraper, then into a sharp flake reserved for the fine work of thorn and fiber. Nothing is wasted. Shape flows from task to task, the way water flows from pool to trickle to dampness and still nourishes. Around the napper, the circle of watchers grows thoughtful. They begin to see that stonework is time work. You must imagine not only the next strike, but the next hour, the next day, the meal, the journey, the hard season ahead. Planning lives inside the edge angle chosen now, and the mass left for later. A blade too thin may sing today and fail tomorrow. A blade too thick may last but cost more strength than it saves. This balance is a quiet wisdom that does not need a long name to be true. In that balance, some minds shine, and those minds become examples that others copy, and the group's tools take on a family resemblance that could be recognized even on a far shore. There is music in the work. Stone on stone rings high. Antler on stone thumps low. Trimming makes a small chipping that sounds like distant rain. The rhythm gathers, stops, begins again. A phrase repeated until the core answers. Hands tire and trade off. Shoulders roll and ease. The ground brightens with flakes that catch sunlight like fish in shallow water. A breeze moves and the flakes tinkle against one another. A faint, glassy chatter as the camp shifts from napping to cooking to story and back again. Through it all, the tools accumulate, not as trophies, but as quiet promises folded into the day. With these, the tubers will be peeled, the sinews cut, the sticks shaped, the hides scraped soft, the marrow tasted, the next shelter repaired, the next fire tended. Stone reshapes other materials to multiply what the body can do. A branch becomes a digging stick, smoothed and tapered. A bone becomes a wedge or a burnisher. A cord of twisted fiber becomes stronger because a scraper cleaned it well. A skin becomes a container when trimmed in a tidy circle and pierced with even holes. The tasks map themselves onto the tools until a glance tells which edge is for scraping, which is for slicing, which is for notching. A toolkit is a memory laid out in objects, and the group moves more confidently because that memory can be held in the hand, repeated, lent, taught, improved. Sometimes they find another's work on the ground, a broken core, a flake with the same neat platform preparation they favor, a hand axe with a familiar curve, abandoned because it snapped across a hidden flaw. They pause, feel the break. Imagine the moment of surprise, the small huff of breath, the decision to leave it and start over. In this way, strangers speak to strangers across time without voices. The land becomes sprinkled with these messages, and following herds or waters does not feel like wandering so much as entering a story already underway. Their own tools will become such traces in turn, and though they do not think of posterity, they think of return. A quarry remembered, a good cobble stored in a notch of roots, a patch of flakes that marks a place where value was made from earth and will be made again. As their skill grows, so does their eye for risk. Flying shards can bite. A careless strike can slice the palm. A fragment underfoot can pierce the heel. They invent small techniques of safety that become habits. Napping over a padded hide so shards land where they're wanted. Turning the core away from the body for the heaviest blows. Keeping children behind the arc of danger. Sweeping flakes into a tidy pile so night feet will avoid surprise. Such small prudences make more tools, more meals, more mornings possible. The group begins to feel the calm that comes when skill lowers the noise of chance, when outcomes fall closer to intention, when hunger meets, more and more often, a prepared edge. The mind that learns stone begins to see patterns everywhere. The way plant fibers twist best in one direction. The way a spear shaft straightens if bent past its protest and then heated gently. The way a shell breaks along lines that can be guessed. The way bone, too, has a grain. This seeing joins walking and fire as a third great teacher, a lens that brings the world into focus for hands. Over time, tasks become smoother, movements smaller, results more reliable. The group wastes less, The same stretch of land yields more. The same effort feeds more mouths. The same day, shaped by planning rather than reacted to in panic, ends with more strength held in reserve. And in the glow of that quiet surplus, someone picks up a fresh cobble, turns it slowly, and imagines a new curve that might slice just a little better, hold just a little easier, last just a little longer, while the children lean closer and the first bright strike sounds again. The road begins as a familiar path between two stands of trees, then loosens into a ribbon of grass, then a scatter of stones, then nothing but a direction the body can feel, even when the eyes meet only horizon. They move because the ground asks them to, because a dry river tells the truth about the season, because a line of cloud lifts in the distance where warm air rises over water, because herds leave a handwriting of hoofprints that says there is promise beyond the next ridge. To leave is not to abandon. It is to continue a conversation with land that has simply shifted its tone. They follow valleys that cup the last green, climb spines of rock where wind keeps insects away, descend into basins stitched with streams, then rise again until the heat thins and breath comes in small measured sips, and with each change the group flexes without breaking, adjusting pace, adjusting silence, adjusting the little tasks that make a long day gentle enough to repeat. The first strange plants are met with caution and method. A leaf is rubbed on a forearm and waited on to see if it bites the skin. A root is roasted in a corner of the fire and tasted by the one who knows bitter from poison by how the tongue curls. Berries are watched when birds eat them, watched again to see which birds return alert and which do not. A shell lifted from a shore pool is smelled, tapped, returned to the heat until it opens with a sigh and lays its salt on the tongue. And that salt becomes a direction all its own. Coasts that offer food even when the plain has gone lean. Tides that recede to reveal traps of stone full of crabs and small fish. Drifts of wrack where beetles and larvae hold fat that the patient fingers of a child can gather. Inland, lakes hold edges where reed beds hide nests, where mud remembers stories, where crocodile slides worn and hippo paths trample the soft ground into clear roads. In the new lands, nothing is entirely new. Every pattern has a cousin they already know, and kinship, even faint, is enough to begin. They find climates that speak in different keys. Rains that once came in a single sweep arrive now in fits, then in overgenerous sheets, then withdraw to leave the sky a white drum of heat. Wind climbs down from mountains with a cold knife hidden in it, and the group learns to sit with backs to stone, warmed all day by sun, to pull fresh hides around shoulders when the fire's reach is not enough, to seek wood in gullies where moisture lingers long after the ridges have gone bare. On wide uplands, the night sky feels closer, and stars become a new set of markers for those who keep watch from the rim of camp. That bright one falling toward the low notch is the hour for stirring the coals. That faint smear appears when the cold is worst, and the sleepers want an extra branch laid quietly near their feet. In low forests, sound replaces sky as map, and they learn the pulse of frogs as a measure of damp, the hush of insects as a warning of wings above, the groaning of old trunks when wind is on the way. Faces change in the crowds of animals around them. Antelope grow stockier and darker in one region, lighter and fleet in another. Deer appear with antlers like branching trees. Small horses, big horses, wild asses, each with different caution and different path. There are new cats with thicker coats and the same patient stillness. Bears whose noses lead them to the edges of the group's waist with a curiosity that must be discouraged with noise and numbers and the sure knowledge that these walkers will neither scatter nor run. Monkeys with unfamiliar calls watch from trees and warn the forest of approach without meaning to, but sometimes those calls also tell the walkers where fruit hangs thick over a stream. The group's eyes become multilingual, fluent in the gestures of fear and habit, able to tell by how a herd lifts its heads in unison or not at all, whether a valley can be crossed safely today. Water leads them, then stone does, then wind, then smell, and often the paths they choose are the ones already chosen by other feet. Elephant highways in the grass, deep and indelible, carry them around swamps that would swallow ankles and temper. Goat tracks stitch slopes in a kind of mountain handwriting that teaches knees where to bend. Over time, their own trails appear behind them, faint at first, then reinforced by return and memory, until even in the complex tangle of a broken plain, there is a seam they can follow by instinct alone. Memory wraps itself around places with quiet names. None of them would speak the same way. A curve of stream that means safety. A stand of trees that means thorn spikes for repairing digging sticks. A low cave mouth that means dry sleep when sky bursts and ground steams. They cross edges that seem to be ends and discover they are only thresholds. A wide brown river, too strong to ford, is persuaded by patience rather than challenge. Follow its bank until it splits and shallows, until it lays down a braid of channels over stones where legs can feel for grip and hands can steady one another. Children lifted from hip to hip, embers carried like a secret sun in the hollowed heart of a rotten log. A ridge that looks hard and final softens when the group finds a fault line where water once chewed a staircase, and they climb one measured handhold at a time, pausing where the wind brings the smell of resin that announces a stand of pine on the far side. Narrow sea channels are greeted like moods of the sky. Sometimes they bear their sand and invite. Sometimes they talk in white fists and must be refused. Sometimes they sleep in a low sigh. And in that moment, a line of people passes with water at their knees and laughter on their lips at the salt's bold taste. New materials offer new tasks. A shell becomes a spoon and a scraper. A lump of soft red earth becomes a smear that chases insects, and pressed onto a palm leaves a mark that delights a child because it is the hand made visible. Plants that never grew on the savannah give fibers that yield to twisting, cords that seem to braid themselves under steady fingers and become slings, nets, bindings for tool and carry bags. Trees with straight hearts grow on colder hills, and those hearts become spear shafts that fly truer, stand straighter against a thrust, or dig deeper when roots hold tight to their secrets. Rock is often familiar, yet sometimes it breaks in surprising music, tricking the napper into a wrong angle, teaching a better one, adding a new curve to the family of edges that travel with the group like a set of remembered songs. The body changes its conversation with distance. In wide, dry lands, they become even more economical with water, moving in patterns that bring them to shade at the day's peak, leaving earlier or later, so sweat works as ally rather than thief. In chill, thin air, their chests learn to swell a little more with each breath. Pace slows by an unspoken agreement, and pauses become more generous, not as surrender, but as a way to treat the road as a companion rather than an opponent. When wind knifes at ears and fingers, they wrap fresh skins hair side inward and turn their backs to gusts, posting watch at angles that hear more than they see, letting the sound of movement right itself against the low rush of air. They do not harden against new places. They become more permeable to them, absorbing what works and forgetting what does not. Knowledge accrues like layers of ash under a long-used hearth. Someone remembers a line of fruiting bushes that leaned toward a stream 2 summers in a row, and steers the group there when glowing thunderheads promise rain. Someone else knows where stone was plentiful and good in a dry valley 3 weeks' walk back, and the group adjusts course to resupply before the next long stretch. The eldest, whose knees protest the steeper slopes, becomes a library of cautions and routes, a living map that marks danger with a gesture, abundance with a narrowing of the eyes, no-go with a click of the tongue that everyone hears even when their feet itch to try. Children carry a different kind of map, the sound of a bird in one place, then the sound of its cousin in another, and the echo in their laughter when they make the two calls rhyme. There are meetings on these roads. At a bend in the river, the group comes upon another group working a carcass, and all pause with hands visible, tools pointed down, faces soft. Words do not do the work here. Posture does. A gift is offered, a strip of meat, a good flake, and returned, a handful of dried seeds, a gesture toward a safe ford. Eyes read scars, read the sway of hips, the angle at which strangers hold their heads, and decide that peace is the better path, because the land is large, and food is not now a coin worth trading blood for. They learn that news also travels this way. Gossip made of glances, warnings made of where eyes refuse to look, directions made of chin points and footprints traced with a stick. After such a meeting, they move with a sense that the world is wider and softer than it seemed at dawn. The long roads out have seasons that do not match calendars, but live in the body as urges and rests. There are months when the feet itch and the hips lean forward, even when the fire is warm and food is easy. These are the times when curiosity pulls like a tide, and the group follows a migrating line of birds, or the scent of distant rain, or the quiet knowledge that the animals they love to track will soon leave for hills where the grass is new. Then there are months when roots are fat, fish predictable, eggs thick in reeds, and the fire's ash is grey to the depth of a palm and cool on top every morning. And in those months the road waits while the hands make more, teach more, repair more, improve and refine the tools that will make the next leaving calm rather than desperate. Leaving and staying are not opposites. They are breaths, in and out, each feeding the other. They find moments of wonder that lodge in memory as firm as any meal. On a shore where water retreats farther than any of them has seen, the ground gleams with a mirror, and they see themselves walking on the sky, small dark figures crossing a bright firmament, and for the rest of the day, even the elders smile without reason. In a valley where fog pools every morning and lifts in a single wave when the sun reaches a certain angle, someone lifts a hand at just the right moment, and the fog breaks against their fingers, and a child squeals and pretends they have power over clouds. On a high slope at night, the air so still that breath hangs like threads, they watch a burning stripe tear slowly across the ancestors' lights and put a name to it that means the sky's ember. And for weeks after, every spark that jumps from the fire is greeted with a little laugh and a look upward. Predicaments shape them without grinding them down. A stretch of salt plain with no shade teaches them the art of making shade out of themselves, standing in a small circle, heads bowed, the smallest tucked in among knees, while others take turns facing the glare and counting heartbeats until relief comes. A narrow canyon, beautiful at noon, roars without warning in the late afternoon after a distant storm, and the group learns to read wetness high on walls, debris caught in branches, the smell that announces bad water with a sour sweetness, and they avoid such places at such hours thereafter with a choreographed certainty that needs no discussion. A puncture in the soul from a hidden thorn teaches everyone to test the ground with the eyes as much as the feet, and the one who limps becomes the one who watches the sky more closely that day, trading speed for the wisdom of noticing. As they move farther, the idea of far becomes different. Once, the hill you could see was the end of thought. Now the end of thought is kept carefully beyond the end of seeing, an agreed-upon humility that says the world is larger than any plan, and that plans must be light enough to bend. The days that go badly are not read as punishment, but as instruction, and the days that go well are not read as entitlement, but as the sweet confirmation that attention has been paid. In cold lands, the fire's smoke looks bluer, and they learn not only to carry it, but to sight it where wind will pull it away from sleeping throats and toward dark edges where noses sniff. In humid forests, embers sulk unless fed with wood that sings when split, so they learn to listen to the note that means dry heart even when bark is damp. Across years, the group changes without noticing. Children whose first memory of the world is water on the horizon grow into walkers who can smell the sea even when it hides, whose hands learn the shape of shells as easily as pebbles, who dream at night of waves and wake to listen for them, even far inland. Elders who were born beside an inland lake learn to love the hum of insects, that chorus in new forests, and to interpret the particular silence that means a big foot has stopped nearby and is listening back. They carry threads of all these places knotted in their habits, so that a basket woven on a mountain edge carries a pattern first, noticed in reeds by a river mouth, and a knot holding a hide around shoulders recalls the twist used to bind a fish net on a tidal flat. Sometimes they return by another route and do not know it until a familiar rock shows its face from a new angle, and the body says yes before the eyes do. The sight releases laughter that feels like relief and victory at once, because the world is huge and yet also connected in ways that only walking reveals. They add a new memory to the old landmark. Not just the place where figs hung low, but the place where the cold wind dropped suddenly on the leeward side. Not just the bend where antelope once lay down, but the bend where children found a clutch of eggs under a mat of roots and learned how to carry them on fern fronds without breaking a single one. The map in their minds grows in 3 dimensions, with stories as contour lines and smells as distances, and the long roads out become not a line, but a web. When they sleep in new places, the dreams change pitch. The lullaby of insects comes in different patterns, and at first, sleep is light. But after a week, the new pattern becomes familiar, and the body floats on it as easily as on a known river. Waking at dawn, they see the sky's color mixed with the day's scent, and know in a glance whether to angle toward shade or toward height, whether to break their fast quickly or let the children chew slowly and make jokes before they go. The road itself, with all its risks and gifts, becomes a kind of teacher whose lessons are not shouted but offered in patient repetition, and they accept those lessons because they make sense in muscle and in breath and in the steady, unhurried beat of feet on ground that has not yet run out and shows no sign that it ever will. Home is a moving circle of faces, a village that carries itself. There are no walls, only the soft line of bodies around a fire and the wider line of attention that keeps watch over the night and over one another. Belonging is built out of small, repeated acts. A strip of meat pressed into a hungry hand without counting. A gourd of water tipped toward a parched mouth. A glance that weighs a limp and quietly redistributes the day's loads. Strength is a braid here. No single strand holds the weight for long. Children drift from hip to hip, from aunt to elder brother, to a grey-eyed grandmother, whose knees do not love hills, but whose lap is a harbour. The very young learn the group's pulse before words can shape it. Who wakes first? Who sleeps lightly? Who always notices a missing face? And in that knowing, safety grows. Food travels along paths of trust. The one who found the honey, arms sticky and triumphant, flicks away bees and splits the comb so the sweetness reaches every mouth. Not because a rule commands it, but because sweetness tastes best when it echoes from many throats at once. The hunter whose throw went right holds the hide taut while others slice and share. The one whose throw went wide sits down anyway and eats anyway, because tomorrow's luck can braid with today's skill. Around the fire, portions are an algebra of memory. The limper gets the marrow-rich piece without discussion. The nursing mother receives the first roasted tuber because milk is made from such gifts. The child who carried coals like a tiny sun is praised with the crispy edge everyone loves. These transactions are more than calories. They are the arithmetic of we. Care finds its shape in hands. A foot blister is washed and dried with ash, then wrapped in a strip of soft hide. Thorns are coaxed from heels with the point of a clean flake, while someone holds the patient's shoulder. and hums. A tooth that throbs is soothed with chewed leaves and warm water. The elder with gaps where teeth once worked is fed soft tidbits, a kind of repayment for stories told in the patient voice of experience. When a fall bruises a rib, work bends to make room. The injured one becomes the organizer of tasks that need a good eye more than a strong back, points where the baskets should dry, where the hides should hang, when the fire should be banked against wind. No one is left behind, because leaving someone behind would mean soaring through the group's own spine. Survival is not a race, it is a choreography. Teaching is a season that never ends. The small copy the small before, they copy the tall. A toddler will drag a stick and call it spear, will sit by a pebble pile and pretend to flake, while serious eyes track the real rhythm in the hands of the skilled. When hands are ready, lessons have a softness that keeps curiosity brave. An elder will place a learner's fingers not on the sharp, but on the safe back of a tool to feel balance first, edge second. Tracks are read aloud with gesture and sound. 2 fingers pressed into dust to show a cloven hoof. A palm skated lightly to mark where belly brushed sand. A hush to honor the way the trail suddenly tightens when fear quickened the herd. The lessons repeat in different light and on different ground until a hidden knowledge becomes ordinary skill, until a child's first correct guess at a trail earns a grin that warms all evening. Work sorts itself into talents without cages. The quick-eyed excel at spotting fruit ripeness from a distance. The heavy-shouldered take pleasure in digging roots from stubborn clay. The sure-footed lead on river rocks. The steady-armed keep rhythm when pounding seeds. The calm-voiced quiet, a skittish child. The keen-eared notice the shift in frog song that means water is thinning. Those talents travel with people as they age, changing shape but not value. A youth who once sprinted may become the tireless carrier. A carrier may, with time, become the keeper of lists that no one writes down, the places where straight shoots grow, where thorn is long and strong, where wind carries embers safely. Status exists, but it hums rather than shouts. The admired are those who make the group lighter to move, calmer to rest, fuller to eat. Disagreement comes, as weather does, and is met with tools as real as hand axes. Voices rise, then someone laughs at themselves first and punctures the seriousness, or an elder repeats the disputant's words back in a kinder rhythm that drains the sting, or the group simply goes walking for a while until breath evens and road thought replaces fire thought. Fairness is enforced by the quiet weight of many eyes. Greed feels heavy in the hands because it carries every gaze with it. The worst punishment is distance, a space opening in the circle, silence where there is usually easy talk. The best forgiveness is proximity restored. Someone sits close again, shoulder to shoulder, and the world resumes its shape. In this way, the village repairs itself daily. Language grows vines around meaning. There are calls sharp as stones for danger and calls soft as moss for comfort. But more and more, there are woven sounds that point to ideas you can't pick up, later behind. Enough. Again. Gestures stay as partners to sound, making thought visible when light is good, and the hands are free. Songs begin as works metronomes, pounding, scraping, twisting, grinding, and become games for children, and then, slowly, baskets of memory for the whole group, holding the sequence of places along a river, the names of plants that soothe a cough, the faces of those who are gone but still present in the way the group does things. A melody can carry the shape of a trail. A rhythm can hold the recipe for glue. A chorus can make courage out of many small voices braided together. Play is not the opposite of survival. It is its rehearsal. Children stalk each other through grass, practice stillness, practice pounces that stop a hand an inch from a shoulder, and reward control with giggles. They build pretend traps from twigs, test them on unwary beetles, learn about leverage and patience, and the pleasures of success that arrives slowly. Adults play too, testing throws at a circle drawn in dust, comparing tracks for the pure joy of guessing right, inventing contests whose only prize is a new joke. In play, failure is safe and learning is fast, and when real tasks come, the body already knows the movements, and the mind already trusts its own small flashes of good idea. Ritual knits days together into years, first fruits placed by the fire and tasted by the eldest before the rest reach in. A finger dipped in ash and tapped gently on a child's forehead when they wake cranky and the camp needs harmony. A murmured set of thanks to a carcass for lying down and feeding many. When death visits, the group slows and stands close. They touch the cooling skin. They speak the dead person's particular laugh out loud so it won't fade too quickly. They lay the body where the earth is dry and the view is kind. They leave tools or food, not because the dead will use them, but because giving makes the ache honest. Grief is shared the way meat is, and its sharing prevents rot inside. The next day, the tasks begin again with a tenderness that honors the absence and keeps the living alive. Sleep is arranged with sense and care. The smallest bodies tuck at the warmest center, ringed by parents and friends, ringed again by those who like to wake at the slightest snap of twig, and beyond them the watchers who trade the night like a baton. The fire's low eye is kept from flaring by ash. A lesson learned, taught, reinforced. So dreams are not torn by bright surprise. Before closing their eyes, many will reach out and touch a familiar ankle, a calf, a wrist, the way sailors check ropes, the way builders check knots, a quick inventory that says, yes, we are all here. If a cry rises in the dark, hands find hands before they reach for tools, and the group listens together before it decides what to do. Weather, sickness, and hunger sometimes arrive as a committee, and the village without walls becomes a machine of kindness. The one with fever sweats against a cooled stone. The one with cough breathes steam from fragrant leaves. The one with no appetite is coaxed with savory drippings and the jokes that make appetite return. When storms pin them down, they turn the enforced nearness into an opportunity to mend. Nets are re-knotted, baskets reinforced, tales elongated into absurdity until laughter shakes the rain off shoulders. When good fortune floods them, berries hanging thick, fish schooling close, they do more than eat. They preserve. Smoke rises, strips hang, seeds dry in shallow dishes of bark, and the future feels a little less sharp. A quiet economy of favors keeps value flowing. A bundle of straight shoots is traded for a lesson in binding. A morning of water carrying buys an afternoon of learning a new knot. A promise to take the second watch becomes a guarantee of a nap at sunset tomorrow. No ledger exists beyond memory and reputation, yet the accounts seem to balance, because everyone prefers a world where help is easy to ask for and satisfying to give. Reputation is a gentle fire, the generous warm in its glow, the stingy feel its lack and learn to bring a little more to the circle next time. Animals find places in this village too. A half-tame dog-like shadow begins to sleep on the edge of light, trading warning for warmth, and slowly the group learns its moods, and it learns theirs. Birds learn that this camp throws scraps and comes closer when the knives begin to whisper. Children learn which beaks nip and which only stare. The relationship is not ownership, not yet, but attention paid both ways. A recognition that lives can braid across species if neither pulls too hard. The village leaves traces that it later recognizes as its own handwriting. A circle of stones blackened and cracked, a midden where shin bones split for marrow tell their glossy story, a smooth log seat that remembers the weight of a storyteller. All are markers that this spot once held the group's pulse. When they return by accident, months later, the place feels friendly before memory catches up. And the welcome is not just in the resources, but in the sense of continuity, the feeling that life here is part of a strand that can be picked up and knotted again without breaking. New people sometimes appear at the edge of the firelight with cautious eyes and empty hands, and the village without walls has ways to test and embrace. A gift is offered that would be hard to refuse politely. A sip of water, a coal, a place to warm palms. Questions are asked by gesture. Where from? Where to? Is there danger behind you? Answers are weighed in posture and breath. Trust builds not in a single leap, but in small steps that feel like stepping stones across a stream. If the newcomers stay, their skills are folded into the loom. If they pass, their news is added to the group's larger picture of the world, and the map grows. Over time, the habit of looking after one another becomes an instinct as strong as the need to drink and the urge to move toward shade. A child totters near the fire, and 3 hands reach before the child registers heat. A pot threatens to tip, and feet find the rock that will wedge it safe. A story falters, and someone picks up its thread without stealing it. These reflexes save seconds, save wounds, save breath, save days. And those savings accumulate into seasons of health that could have gone otherwise. The village without walls is a technology as real as fire or stone, a structure of attention and compassion that can be assembled anywhere in an hour and made strong for years by practice. It stretches to include, flexes to protect, and moves as one creature with many minds, each mind warmed by others, each pair of hands made cleverer by the work they do together. What lasts is rarely loud. It is the steady footfall that teaches the body how to use breath like a quiet tool, the habit of starting early and stopping wisely, the practice of reading a day before it fully arrives. It is the memory in knees and ankles of where to place weight when the ground shifts, the practiced way of loosening a shoulder before lifting, the understanding that pace is not a punishment, but a permission to continue. Endurance is a language written into posture, into the small adjustments that cost little and save much, into the preference for rhythms that can be repeated more times than anyone can count. The lesson lives in muscles first and ideas later. Move so you can keep moving. Choose so you can keep choosing. Breathe so you can keep seeing what the world is offering. What lasts is warmth shared on purpose. Not only the heat of fire, though that too, but the heat of notice, the quick glance that catches fatigue before it becomes failure, the hand that takes a burden without being asked, the kindness of arranging the sleeping order so the restless can rise without walking over everyone, the thoughtful banking of coals, so night is a companion instead of a thief. Fire teaches that light can be carried, that danger can be negotiated with preparation, that comfort given to others returns as quiet in your own bones. The glow on faces at dusk is not just light. It is proof that attention multiplied becomes safety. Proof that a circle is stronger than a line. What lasts is the way skill turns into generosity. A stone edge perfected over an hour saves 10 hours of struggle spread across many hands. A knot learned well secures not only today's bundle, but tomorrow's shelter. Knowledge ripens into ease, and ease leaves room for grace. The one who can coax a flake from a stubborn core does not keep the trick. They slow the movement so eyes can drink it. The one who reads tracks like an open page does not rush ahead. They kneel with a child and make their fingers into cloven hooves in dust. Teaching becomes a reflex, not because of altruism alone, but because a group where many know how is a group that sleeps more deeply. The craft in the hand becomes trust in the circle, and that trust keeps hunger smaller and fear shorter. What lasts is the courage to be curious while staying careful. Every new plant is a question. Every new path is a test. Every stranger is a mirror worn by another life. Curiosity leans forward and collects possibilities. Caution leans back and weighs them. And between the two, the group walks a path that keeps widening. The habit of trying small before trying big, smelling, rubbing on skin, roasting a pinch, tasting a breath, keeps poison at the edge and brings more foods into the bowl. The habit of watching where birds visit most and where they refuse to land maps the unseen. The habit of standing still for a count of beats when a shadow shifts turns panic into information. Curiosity makes the world larger. Caution keeps you large enough to meet it. What lasts is the choice to measure wealth by what moves with you. The richest camp is the one that can stand up and go without losing itself. Skills light enough to carry, stories small enough to fit into songs, tools that do more than one job, relationships that stretch without tearing. This way of counting refuses to be trapped by the pretty heaviness of things that cannot cross a river. It prizes what opens options, a basket that folds, a fire that travels, a set of paths in the mind, a shared joke that can calm a child. On a windy ridge, mobility becomes not just distance covered, but an internal arrangement, a room you can make around yourself in any weather, a capacity to begin again without becoming smaller. What lasts is attention, the old art of noticing. The ground is not just ground, it is a diary full of pressure and scuff, of slides and sudden stops, of the faint commas of insect feet and the bold declarations of hooves. The air is not just air. It is a corridor of smells and temperatures that change like moods and carry news ahead of sight. Light is not just light. It is a clock, a measuring tape, a warning, a promise. The steady habit of paying attention rescues time from accident. It turns the unlucky into the prepared into the generous. In attention, fear shrinks because the unknown keeps becoming known, one detail at a time, until even surprise has the familiar shape of "we know what to do." What lasts is the way stories make memory public. A group can remember more than any single skull. Songs hold the sequence of streams along a long valley. Rhythms pack the method for making glue. Gestures and melodies together keep safe the list of plants that help a wound close, and the list of places to avoid when clouds are stacked like spears. Stories carry not just facts, but feelings about facts. Where to move quickly, where to walk softly, where to laugh for courage. And those feelings teach in ways numbers cannot. Around the fire, a tale is a map. At noon on the trail, a line from a chant is a compass. In sudden rain, a joke shared by all is a shelter pitched in sound. What lasts is the instinct to make room for each other's differences until they become strengths. Some hands love fine work, some love force, some love delicate timing, some love long carrying, some love the puzzle that lives in an unfamiliar scent. Some love the music of work done in time with other hands. When these lean toward one another instead of away, they make a single animal with many gifts. The one who wakes at every twig snap stands watch. The one who sleeps like a stone lifts the heaviest water. The one whose knees have learned the price of slopes becomes the advisor who saves everyone from wasting strength. An old truth grows clearer. A good group makes good people possible, and good people make a group better than the sum of its bodies. What lasts is the humility to read limits with respect. Hunger teaches speed and thrift, but gluttony teaches regret and scarcity. Water teaches when to sip and when to stop, and those who listen carry distance farther with the same gourd. Cold teaches layers and windbreaks, and the art of letting stones hold heat for you. Heat teaches shade, and the art of calling a day enough before it becomes too much. The limits of bodies are not insults. They are instruments that, tuned well, make a long music. Pride that refuses to hear them is a short fire. Respect that hears them is a banked ember that can cross mountains. What lasts is repair. Tools nick, relationships fray, plans wobble, feet crack, patience thins. Repair is not an afterthought, but a daily craft. A dull edge is renewed without drama. A misunderstanding is sorted before nightfall. A strap is reknotted. A thick word is followed by a soft one. A blister receives ash and time. A hurt feeling is stroked into calm by someone who remembers their own hurt and how it passed. Repair turns breakage into texture, texture into strength. A mended thing is often better than a new one because it carries proof that it will not be abandoned at the first sign of use. What lasts is the habit of leaving a place kinder than you found it when you can. Ash scattered, so grass will grow back. Bones carried away from sleeping ground. Water approached softly, so banks do not collapse. Nests observed rather than robbed when bellies are already full. This is not romantic softness. It is a strategy for returning to a world that remains generous. A land that is not afraid of you will feed you longer. A stream that is not muddied today will run clear tomorrow when you need to see the stones. The same principle turns inward and outward at once. Take what you need, learn how much that is, and make sure you know how to need less when the world asks you to. What lasts is the refusal to hoard fear. Fear is a warning, not a diet. Shared fear becomes plan, becomes watchfulness distributed, becomes the decision to shift camp when a valley feels wrong. Hidden fear becomes mistakes that breed more fear. In the open, fear shrinks into tasks. You take first watch. I'll gather thorn. You move the children to the quiet side. I'll feed the coals low. We'll tell the funny version of the leopard story and sleep in a ring. The next morning, fear is smaller and knowledge is larger, and the day can be about food again, about teaching, about the steady business of living. What lasts is the taste for enough. Enough is not a fixed measure. It flexes with season and place. It is the full belly that still moves lightly, the full basket that can be carried far, the full day that still leaves breath in the chest for a song at dark. The quiet joy of enough trains hunger to be wise, and trains desire to be a guide rather than a master. Enough is not opposed to beauty. It is what makes beauty visible, because eyes not clouded by grasping can see the particular shine of a wet stone at the ford, the particular grace of a friend's hand turning a fish in coals, the particular peace of a child leaning into sleep without worry. What lasts is the habit of beginning again. Storms scatter plans, rivers rise, herds turn, illness presses the body flat, grief sits heavy on shoulders that once carried baskets over hills. Beginning again is the brave art of small starts, a single coal coaxed from ash into flame, a single step that does not try to be a journey, a single lesson repeated for the hand that forgot it during a hard season, a single joke told too early and then told again, right on time. The world never promised ease. It offered renewal, and those who expect to begin again in many forms do not break when the shape of a life changes. They simply adjust the knot, try a different angle, shift the load, rest where the wind is kind. and resume. What lasts is the sense that you belong to the same world as the things that test you. The cat that stalks and the wind that steals heat are adversaries only for a moment. They are teachers for much longer. From the cat, you learn stillness and the price of distraction. From the wind, you learn shelter building and the economy of heat. From the thorn, you learn care for feet and hands. From hunger, you learn gratitude and timing. From distance, you learn patience that does not feel like waiting, but like living. Respect replaces resentment. The land stops being a backdrop and becomes a partner. And in partnership, survival turns into a craft worth practicing for its own quiet pleasures. What lasts is the soft power of gratitude, not as a ceremony that requires names, but as a stance that keeps the eyes clear. Gratitude turns meals into feasts without changing their size. It turns tasks into chances to be good at something in front of the people you love. It turns watchfulness into a service rather than a burden. It turns the end of the day into a place where the breath falls out of the body in a long exhale that says, in whatever language the body prefers, we did enough. Beside fire or under stars, gratitude is the pause that lets the mind rinse itself of grit and receive sleep with open hands. What lasts is the understanding that wisdom is not a mountain you climb, but a trail you keep walking. It is made of steps that do not feel like epiphanies. Soak the roots first, carry fire carefully, listen to elders, teach the young, watch the sky, wear the day gently, fix what breaks, eat together, move when the land says move. Be kind even when you are tired, because kindness is a kind of rest that others can share. Each small act is a pebble placed in a long path. One morning you look back and see the way shining behind you, a ribbon that has carried many feet to water and shade and story. And you understand that the path is the inheritance and the gift, that making more of it is how a life earns its place among other lives, that to keep walking it with attention and care is to carry forward everything that mattered and everything that will keep on mattering. Thank you for drifting back through time with me. If this journey helped you unwind, gently tap like and subscribe for more calm histories to fall asleep to. I'd love to hear what part settled your mind the most. Leave a quiet note in the comments for others to discover later. Until the next night's story, breathe easy, rest well, and let the long wisdom of the past carry you into sleep.